Carl Sandburg, for many years, was a member of this International Platform Association, and he was the editor of our newspaper. The Carl Sandburg Award is given each year to the nation's most outstanding people's poet. Now, I have to be upfront with you. The man I'm about to introduce is not a complete success. Starting out to be a civil engineer, Hal Thaw, his manager, complains that he has received not one sou from surveying. 11 gold and 5 platinum albums, an Emmy, a citation by Congress, movies, televisions, public appearances attended by 50,000 people, singer, composer, photographer, philanthropist, and presidential commissioner. Fame, fortune, and glamour. And in addition to this, or perhaps in spite of this, he is a sensitive poet and a warm, caring, comfortable human being. Ladies and gentlemen, John Denver. John, the International Platform Association presents this award to you not because you're glamorous or famous or important, which you are, but because you talk to us, the ordinary people. You say what we feel, and you're one of us, and you can communicate. You reach us. John, we know you care. Even when you speak negative truths, you make us feel positive. We love you, John, because you have shined up in the 70s the hopes that were tarnished by the Dylans in the 60s. You're a beautiful guy, John.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you very much.
I'm just supposed to read what's printed on your bowl in my ancient eyes. The 1982 Carl Sandburg Award of the International Platform Association to John Denver, the people's poet, in the great tradition of Carl Sandburg.
Thank you very much. Bruce, thank you, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I can accept this award only in thinking of the millions of people around the world who are fans of mine, who have listened to my music and enjoyed it, whose hearts have been touched, and whose lives on occasion have been uplifted. To those people who have used my words in their weddings, who have sung my songs when their children were being born, they are truly who make my life worth living, and I'm very grateful to them and to you for this very, very nice award. I'm a great admirer of Mr. Sandburg and have always been, and it's for many reasons, not the least of which is that he was quoted as saying once upon a time that he preferred the simple poems that appeal to simple people. I relate very much to that, not always of my own choosing. I have been called the Mickey Mouse of rock. That has more recently been updated to the Ronald Reagan of pop. One of the things that I appreciate most about Mr. Sandburg and his work was how much it related to life, to living, and to social circumstances of the time, to what was going on politically. It is in that sense that I am especially appreciative of this reward in regard to his name being with it. Something that he wrote once in a dedication for a book by the poet Stephen Vincent Benet I'd like to share with you. He knew the distinction between pure art and propaganda in the written or spoken word. He could sing to give men music, consolation, pleasure. He could intone chant or prayer pointing the need for men to act. He illustrated the code and creed of those writers who seek to widen the areas of freedom for all men, knowing that men of ideas vanish first when freedom vanishes. He saw that a writer's silence on living issues can in itself constitute a propaganda of conduct leading toward the deterioration of death or death of freedom. He wrote, often hoping that men would act because of his words. Truly, that is why I write. That is how it comes out of me, and that is what I mean by it. I would that I could move people to act, that I could do something about the indifference that Ms. Ullman spoke about earlier, that I could do something to move people to make something out of this incredible opportunity of choice that we have in our lives. I'd like to speak a little bit today about prevention in regard to choice, the choices that we have. A few weeks ago, I was out to dinner one night in Aspen, Colorado, ran into an old friend of mine, a really dear friend I've known for about 15 years. He's one of the guys that taught me how to ski. He's an old camping buddy. He's a fishing buddy, hiking, motorcycle riding. Well, we had great times together, truly. And over the years, it seems we've not been able to spend quite as much time together as we used to. And we've both gone through some changes. And the night that I ran into my friend at dinner, he sat down at our table, and he was obviously in desperate circumstances. A little point of information, something you may not know, there are 4 stages of inebriation. Charming, intelligent, invisible, and bulletproof. My friend was obviously invisible and well on his way to bulletproof. Periodically, as he was sitting with us, he would get up to go off to one of the back rooms of the restaurant with someone or another of his friends, and it was pretty obvious what he was doing back there. Each time he came back to our table, his eyes would be a little bit bigger, his actions a little bit more frantic, his speech a little bit more slurred. The morning after that, I was out at the athletic club where I work out in Aspen, and after a good morning workout, I'd gone upstairs to make a phone call, ran into my friend in the restaurant, and he was having a breakfast that I could not believe. He had 4 eggs on his plate. He had about a 16-ounce T-bone steak. He had several rolls smeared with butter and honey, and he was drinking coffee like it was going out of style. His eyes were real thin and very red. I asked him what he was doing, and he allowed us how he'd had a little bit too much fun the night before, and he was trying to get himself together for a tennis match that he had in the afternoon. I found out that night that somewhere during the second set of that tennis match, my friend had a heart attack. I went to see him at the hospital in Aspen, the intensive care ward there, and when I walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. This guy who I thought was very healthy, always tan, out in the sun, playing tennis, doing something outdoors, had lost all of his color. He was lying in bed, had tubes sticking out all over him. I asked him how he was. He said, "You know, I'm going to have to quit this tennis game before it kills me." I propose to you that it's not the tennis that he ought to quit or to give up. But the story illustrates very much in my mind how we deal with prevention. In fact, I'd like to do a little poem for you that deals with prevention that I found in my chiropractor's office. The poem is called "The Ambulance Down in the Valley." "'Twas a dangerous cliff, as they freely confessed, though to walk near its edge was quite pleasant. But over the side slipped a duke and a prince, and it had fooled many a peasant. The people all said something had to be done, though their projects did not at all tally. Some said put a fence around the edge of the cliff. Others, an ambulance down in the valley." The lament of the crowd was profound and quite loud as their hearts overflowed with great pity. But the ambulance carried the cry of the day as it spread to the neighboring cities. A collection was made to accumulate aid, and dwellers in highway and alley gave dollars and cents not to furnish a fence, but an ambulance down in the valley. "For the cliff is all right if you're careful," they said, "and if folks ever trip and are falling, it's not the slipping and sliding that hurts so much as the shock when they're stopping." And so on for years as these mishaps occurred. Quick forth would the rescuers sally to pick up the victims who fell from the cliff with the ambulance down in the valley. Said one in his plea, It's a marvel to me that you'd give so much greater attention to repairing results than to curing the cause. Why, you'd much better aim at prevention. The mischief, of course, should be stopped at its source. Come, friends and good neighbors, let's rally. It makes far better sense to rely on a fence than an ambulance down in the valley. He's wrong in his head, the majority said. He would end all our earnest endeavors. He's the kind of a jerk that would halt our good work, but we will support it forever. Don't we pick up them all just as quick as they fall and treat them with care quite liberally? A superfluous fence is of no consequence if the ambulance works in the valley. Well, this story is queer, as I have mentioned it here, though things oft occur which are stranger. More humane, we assert, to repair all the hurt than the plan of removing the danger. Before it all ends, it's time to begin to attend to these things rationally. Yes, build up the fence and let us dispense with the ambulance down in the valley. "37 years ago today, an atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima in Japan. 2 days later, another bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Within hours of those two occurrences, more than 200,000 people perished. Since that time, another 100,000 have died from relatable causes. The bombs that we now have are 50 to 100 times more powerful than the ones that were dropped on those two cities. This year, our military budget is some $256 billion. Ms. Ullman related that we spend something like $1 million every minute. That every 15 days we spend more than enough to feed and clothe and house all the people on the planet who are now starving to death, who are hungry, who are homeless. Since 1948, we have spent some $6 trillion on military armaments and hardware. That's approximately $1,500 for every man, woman, and child who has lived on the planet since that time or is living today. It seems that we could do much more with that money. It doesn't seem that what we have that what we strive so hard for in regard to security, what we say national security, has worked at all. Do you feel more secure today than you did when you were a child, than you did 10 years ago, than you did 20 years ago, or 37 years ago? You know, there are great studies going on all across this country, in fact, all around the world, having to do with the psychological impact of the threat of nuclear war. It's also obvious out there, the whole thing that's going on with what is called pop or punk rock in my field of music is an expression of people who feel that they have no future and who are totally frustrated with the lives that they're living today. What will it take before we change this? Especially we here in this country who have the opportunity to make that change, who have the opportunity to make and to express and to act on our choices. Carl Sandburg wrote a poem, The Unknown War. Be calm, collected, easy in the face of the next war to come. Be calm. In the faint light and smoke of the flash and the mushroom of the first bomb blast of the Third World War, keep your wits collected. At the information to be given out after the few days of the fast-moving next war, take it easy, be calm and collected, and say to yourself, first things come first, and after this world comes another. Introducing, said a spieler with a winking at a shill, introducing Miss Nuclear Fission, a wild gal in her time, and she's going to be wilder yet. And you notice I don't dare touch her, she's that wild. Introducing, said a spieler with a cockeye at a shill, introducing Mr. Chain Reaction, her pal and dancing partner, a hairy brute, 10 billion gorillas in one, and when he tickles you, what gives? Nothing, but you die laughing. Part of The Unknown War by Carl Sandburg. From the beginning of time, survival on this planet has been based on it's you or it's me. That is the way we live. That is the fact behind the military. That is the fact that describes national security. It's what all the weapons are for. It's what all the wars have been fought about, basically. Survival, you or me. I propose to you that that has changed, that we can no longer think that way. In fact, I'm not proposing to you. It was proposed a long, long time ago. Back from the beginning, they used to say an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But almost 2,000 years ago, one man came and he said, don't do unto others as they do unto you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We have forgotten that. The Russians have forgotten that. The Israelis have forgotten that. It's a unique time in the history of life on this planet. Decisions are being made and actions being taken which are going to affect not only our lives, but the lives of all future generations. In fact, the potential for life itself. It's very important that whatever occurs, that whatever decisions are made or actions are taken, that they are an accurate reflection of the people, especially those people who have the opportunity to voice their opinions, as we do in this country. And what is necessary is to make what I call a conscious choice. I was talking to a psychologist upstairs, and he mentioned something about the difficulty of changing human nature, that it's almost impossible, and when it is possible, it's very, very painful and time-taking. What we're talking about here, what I'm talking about, is change in human nature. No longer to be you or me ever again, but you and me. That if this is the last bushel of wheat or the last barrel of oil or the last hectare of producing ground, that I have a better chance of surviving if I share that with you than if I try to keep it from you. It's a conscious choice. You know, we were given this incredible thing, not our minds, I'm not talking about our minds, but consciousness, awareness. And we can make use of that, and perhaps making use of that is the next step in human evolution, to make this conscious choice to live in peace. You know, a few years ago I was out on concert tour, and it was right when they had the gasoline shortages out in California. As a matter of fact, I had tried to buy some gasoline and some gasoline tanks for the Windstar project, which I have going in Colorado, and boy, did it get totally blown out of proportion in a way, and I never had any gas, folks. I still don't. There were headlines in newspapers all over the country that said, Detroit says the American people will not buy a small car. You must remember that. It's only 4 or 5 years ago. But that's not what's happened, has it? All of a sudden, people got hit where it hurts, and they made a conscious choice in the matter, and they started buying automobiles that were available, that ran much more efficiently and ran longer, needed less maintenance, and almost put Detroit out of business. Our whole country, our whole economy is still suffering from that conscious choice that people like you and me made. There was no movement to do that. There was no celebrity in front of some big group espousing a cause, let's all get together and not buy Detroit cars. Individuals like you and I making a conscious choice. How many people do you know who have been overweight lately or who are having problems? They don't sleep well, they're grumpy, they're irritable all the time, they're not doing so well on the job, they're unhappy, and they've gone to their doctor, and the doctor says, you know, you're going to have to make some changes in your life or you're going to die. And in fact, sometimes maybe it was the heart attack that spurred them to make those changes. But all of a sudden, they started cutting out all of the dairy products in their diet. They started having less coffee, less red meat, started eating a little bit more healthily, not so much salt in their food, started exercising a little bit. And now they look younger than they've looked in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years. A conscious choice. A conscious choice. We too can make a conscious choice about this thing called war. You know, it's the way it's always been, but it doesn't have to be that way anymore. And we can start to think more perhaps of you and me and how we can live and learn and work together in the world. Yesterday I was at the Oshkosh Air Show, the Experimental Aircraft Association. I'm very proudly a member of. There were people there from over 63 countries. 300,000 people last Sunday. Aviation is one of those things that brings people together. Business brings people together. Art brings people together. Poetry brings people together. Music. I was in China a year ago this last month, and I saw an incredible presentation of the Chinese and the Houston ballets together. And when the curtain went up on that stage, there were 14 couples there, a Chinese man and an American woman. A man and a Chinese woman. And it brought tears to your eyes before they took a step to see that. There are things that bring people together. Weapons don't bring people together. In Denver, Colorado last month, in May, 2 junior high school kids stabbed each other to death in the hallway of their high school. You know that there are no girls' athletic programs in most of the schools in Denver now? Do you know that there are no band programs? You know that there are no drama programs? That's part of the budget cuts that we have inflicted on our country, or that have been inflicted on our country, to support the building of weaponry. We're losing all sight of what my friend Bucky Fuller calls livingry. Sure, those kids are knifing each other. You know, they're frustrated. They have no future. They have this cloud that's hanging over all of us, and they don't have the chance to play together, to relate, to compete with one another in a friendly way. So it comes out in knife fights in high school halls. That's what's going on now. What's going to happen to those people when they're out in the world trying to make a living, trying to work with other people to make our society work a little bit better, to improve the condition of life on this planet? I think we're going to be in real tough shape, folks. There was an event that we held in Denver to support a nuclear freeze, which last night was voted down in Congress. There were over 30,000 people there. It was the largest gathering in Colorado history. And I wrote a poem for that event, which I'd like to share with you, about peace and about a conscious choice. There's a name for war and killing, and there's a name for giving in when you know another answer. For me, the name is sin. But there's still time to turn around and make all hatred cease and give another name to living. We could call it peace. And peace would be the road we walk, each step along the way. And peace would be the way we work. And peace the way we play. And all we see that's different and all the things we know, peace would be the way we look. And peace the way we grow. There's a name for separation, and there's a name for first and last when it's all of us or nothing. For me, the name is past. But there's still time to turn around and make all hatred cease and give a name to all the future. We could call it peace. And if peace is what we pray for, and if peace is what we give, then peace will be the way we are, and peace the way we live. For there's still time to turn around and make all hatred cease and give another name to living. We could call it peace. Peace. It's not that I want desperately to change the world. It's that I want desperately, with every ounce of my being, to see us realize who and what we are as human beings. That we are a part of one family. that we deserve each other, that we're here for each other, not against each other. And remembering what Mr. Sandburg said in his introduction to Mr. Benet, I would hope that out of my words, some people somewhere might act and might change their lives and might move toward whatever it is that he or she can do that would improve the quality of life for all the living on this planet. It's what I sing for. It's where the songs come from, folks. We were talking about this upstairs, Bruce and I. I have nothing to do with it. You know, I just happened to be the guy that was there with pen in hand when it came floating by. And with that, I'd like to sing a song for you. It's not one of my hit records, but I think it's one of my better songs. And I think it speaks for me. I'm sure that it speaks for Ms. Ullman and what she had to say, and for all of those children that she and I both represent. I served on a presidential commission on world and domestic hunger under Mr. Carter. Our commission said that we would do more to further national security by getting the third world on its feet and feeding the hungry and getting them in a situation where they can feed themselves than we would do by building more bombs. Thought it was kind of a revolutionary statement coming out of a presidential commission. It also said, we also learned that we really do have the wherewithal to end hunger in the world. I mean, we really do. You and I, we can be part of the generation that sees an end to hunger on this planet forever and ever and ever. That no child need ever starve to death again. Our commission said that's all that's missing is the political will to do something about it. I disagree slightly. I think it's the popular will. When it becomes the will of people like you and me, that will make it political, and we can see an end to this obscenity in our lives. The same is true in my mind in regard to war, to weaponry, to killing. That too can be ended. We can choose livingry. We can choose peace. Anyway, I wrote this song while serving on that commission. It's called I Want to Live. There are children raised in sorrow on a scorched and barren plain. There are children raised beneath the golden sun. There are children of the water, children of the sand, and they cry out through the universe, their voices raised as one. I want to live. I want to grow, I want to see, I want to know, I want to share what I can give, I want to be, I want to live. Have you gazed out on the ocean, seen the breaching of a whale? Have you watched the dolphins frolic in the foam? Have you heard the song the humpback hears 500 miles away, telling tales of ancient history, of passages and home? I want to live, I want to grow, I want to see, I want to know, I want to share what I can give, I want to be, I want to live. For the worker and the warrior, the lover and the liar, for the native and the wanderer in pine, for the maker and the user, the mother and her son, I am looking for my family, and all of you are mine. We are standing all together, face to face, arm in arm. We are standing on the threshold of a dream. No more hunger, no more killing, no more wasting life away. It is simply an idea, and I know its time has come. I want to live, I want to grow, I want to see, I want to know, I want to share what I can give. I want to be, I want to live, and I want to grow. I want to see and I want to know. I want to share what I can give. I want to be, I want to live. I want to live. I want to live.
Ladies and gentlemen, a man who cares. John has kindly consented to answer a few questions. We have a little time. Does anyone have a question? And would you, if you do, please step up to the mic. I see Pat there, as a matter of fact. Pat? John?
All right. You constantly call me Pat. It's Kay. I'm Kay Armour, and I'm from Los Angeles. And John, I couldn't agree with you more about this frustration of trying to make it all somehow clear when it is so clear. And you asked a question, where is the answer? How long will it take for them to get it? And you answered it when you so rightly described your own talents as coming from, I don't know how the word you use, floating past, which we all know that's where talent comes from, and I suppose you call it the spirit. It seems to me that the answer to this question that we're living now about whether the world is going to exist tomorrow or the next day comes from the spirit, not from the intellect or the mind. The mind is now so wrapped up in trying to figure out through words and rhetoric where we went wrong and how many problems exist that we're losing sight that we can't get the answer from that. I'm just agreeing with John. It's not really a question. It's just a dialogue.
Thank
just
you.
A dialogue.
I truly feel, that it is changing. It is out there. There are more and more people who are talking about this notion of you and me, and that we can no longer settle our differences by waging war on one another. There's a whole new science called conflict resolution. And as my friend the psychologist said upstairs, human nature takes a long time and perhaps a great deal of pain to change, and we are changing, and we're in the middle of it. The thing is we don't let it get away from us. It's just right there. We're right on the verge of it, and it's going to take all of us to keep that terrible war from happening. So.
All right. John, I think I speak for everybody here when I say I love you. But it puts us all on the same footing. However, do you have a suggestion for how just a little person can help bring this peace and promote the idea that there is no such thing in this world as killing your enemy? You only make more enemies out of their friends and family. You can't do it.
Well, we have enormous opportunities in this country. One of the things we can do is vote. Less than half of the people who are able and eligible to vote in this country actually vote. We call ourselves a democracy. That's a laugh to me. So that's one thing that we can do, and we can write letters to senators and congressmen, and we ought to be outraged at this vote last night in the Senate or in the Congress. But more than that, and what's most important in my mind, it's like that example of the people with automobiles. You know, it's not going to be a movement or anything like that. It's going to be individuals. And just be sure that everything that you do and what you teach your children, the way you relate with the people who serve you, the people that you work with, your friends, that all is an expression of the peace that's in your heart and the desire for peace. Even when there's conflict, you know, I got a neighbor who is a pain. You know, it just seems like he tries to do everything he can to get my dander up. And sometimes I have to go, ooh. But I don't go beat him up, you know? And I know a little bit about martial arts. I could tear his head off. That isn't going to solve the problem, you know? So if who you are inside, and I truly believe, you know, you said that you love me. I love you too, all of you. You know that. Love is who we are. Love is what we are. Love is our environment, truly. If we could just let that shine through and come through each of us in whatever way possible, there wouldn't be any more fighting. We can use these differences, these conflicts that we have to grow, to learn from one another. You know, I was in China. Communism in China is working, folks. I saw no hungry people over there. I saw not one example of crime. And I looked. Now, they have some real problems. They have a whole situation where they're asked not to have more than one child. And when a society whose whole fabric is based on the family, to be told that you can only have one child, that isn't working too well. And then people who have more than one child are pretty much ostracized and no longer can work. And that's a problem. And there's not a whole lot of inspiration. Less than 5% of the people who try to go to higher educational schools are actually allowed to go. So there's a great deal of lack of initiative in the minds of young people. And they've got real problems over there. But on a large scale for the society, it's working pretty well. And I certainly didn't see anything over there was a threat to my way of life. In fact, I thought I had some things to offer those people, both in my music and through what Windstar is doing, that would be of value to them. I think some of the things that they're doing over there would be of value over here in our society. Most of all, they're people. They're the most wonderful, open, loving people that I've ever come across. Like the Eskimos in Alaska. God, it's people, human beings. Excuse me, I was getting off. I beg your pardon.
If we have to get John out on time, so we have time for one more question, John, please.
Thank you.
John, I'm Evelyn Bowling from Northern California, and I've heard a great deal from all of my friends about this wonderful place that you have out in Colorado called Windstar, and I can't get a clear picture of what it is and what you really do there. And I wonder if you could tell me and whether or not I could come and see for myself.
Yes, you can. Windstar is open to the public all day, every day, in fact, nights. You know, you can drop in there and there'll be somebody to show you around. Windstar is on 1,000 acres of land that I purchased some time ago. Actually, I just got it finally paid for last month. And the Windstar Foundation, the Windstar Project, is doing several things. We're an energy, resource, and development community. We're doing things with solar energy, with wind power. We're one of the small energy producers in Colorado. We produce more than we consume and put it back into the grid, and they're paying us for it, and that's a pretty wonderful thing. And people who come there can see all the varieties of state-of-the-art technology that have to do with solar and wind power, and in a way which allows you to see which one might most effectively work in your home, and we can tell you how to get in touch with the people who supply those products. We're doing experiments with gardening at 7,000 feet, some things that have not been done before, and we can pretty much tell you wherever you live what you can most easily grow in the climate that you live in, and what the season is, and how to do it most effectively, most efficiently. One of the things that we feel very strongly has to do with hunger in the world, and that more and more people are going to be growing their own vegetables in their backyards, and we want to help people show people how to do that. We have workshops that go on throughout the year. People like Amory Lovins, who wrote a book called Soft Energy Paths, was there this past week. Buckminster Fuller's a dear friend of mine, and he comes out there about twice every year. Other folks that have to do with New Age consciousness, with macrobiotics diets. There's a beautiful article in the Current Life magazine, folks, about a doctor who feels that he cured himself of cancer by changing his diet. I believe that that's true, and Michio Kushi, one of the people that the article is about, is a dear friend of mine and also on the advisory board of Windstar. People are, in fact, curing themselves of terminal cancer and heart disease by changes in diet. And that's a pretty far-out thing that's going on. Most specifically, what Windstar is about, all of these other things, see, are kind of secondary in my mind. What we do at Windstar is bring people together. A few years ago, the Alaska Lands Bill was in front of Congress, and all of the environmental groups were together working on it this way and the other, and nothing was really getting accomplished. And what Windstar did was come in and organize a week where we got all of them to work together to go out and do their lobbying, to speak to the people in Congress and on the Hill. And I feel that we were very influential in getting the Alaska Lands Bill passed. A few weeks ago, the rally that we held in Denver, which was the largest rally ever held in Colorado, it was so because Windstar got into it, and what we did is we took all of the people who were for a nuclear freeze and all the people who were absolutely against a nuclear freeze, and by the way we presented the whole thing, brought them all together to say that what we truly want is peace. We don't necessarily know the right way to do it. Here's a good idea over here, others think it's not a good idea, but that's what we want. And it was an incredible evening. That's what I want to do, is to bring people together, to find the way that in all the differences that we have and all the ways that we separate ourselves one from the other, that we truly have the same desires for ourselves and for our children, for the way we want to live at home and around the planet. And I pledge to you Windstar's efforts in that regard forever, and mine as long as I breathe. And I am privileged to have been here with you folks today. Thank you very, very much.
John, one small bit of information. I have problems with the past pluperfect too, and I think that word was strived.
Strived, all right.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Come back and see us next year.